The new winder from the Fiber Artist Supply Company addressed the major issues that we found over the last number of years of making yarn winders. One of the issues that we really liked with this was the ability to not have to clamp it to a table. As you can see here, it does include a clamp. You can clamp it either on this side or if you're left-handed on the other side. But if you take the clamp off, this is the way that I typically wind. You can wind just from your table like that. It has rubber feet on the bottom, so those grip pretty well to the table. The other thing that I like about it is that it's a modular unit. So that means if you need to disassemble it for cleaning, or if you, suppose you were to drop it and damage a part, you could buy just a single part and not have to purchase a whole new unit. And it allows us, from a toolmaker perspective, to be able to service units without having to have it shipped all the way back, serviced, and shipped back to the customer. You just get the part you need and you're done. The other thing we really like about it is this yarn guide assembly. We made it so that you can disassemble it with a set screw, pop this out, and if you decide you want to purchase a art yarn guide, you can just pop that in, tighten the set screw, and you're ready to go. We also used 6 sealed ball bearings in this unit, which is great because it means that all the parts fit tightly and hold snug, but don't need to be serviced and have a really long life. Another feature about this unit that many people don't realize is that you can adjust the yarn guide to 3 different positions. So if you're feeding yarn from behind you, if your swift is behind you and you're winding like this, you would just unscrew this thumb screw, move the yarn guide to the desired position, and retighten it in. We have metal inserts from the bottom, so those will never wear out. Tighten this down, and you're ready to go. A frequently asked question about our yarn winders is, what is the capacity? And that really does depend on the type of yarn that you're using and the amount of tension that you're applying. So you can fit yarn to the point where it's being physically obstructed by the top of this dowel. So you can move this all the way back and get a yarn ball that's approximately that big. But again, it's going to depend on a couple of circumstances. But this is a jumbo yarn ball winder. So for this demonstration, I'm going to show winding a ball of yarn. The first thing you want to do is you want to set your yarn guide at the innermost position. And I like to leave this yarn guide offset just a little bit, so it's not pointed directly at the main winding dowel assembly. So the first thing you do is you take your yarn and you wrap it around. Thread it through the top of this dowel and you're ready to start winding. There's no real maximum speed, but you want to make sure that your swift is ready to go. As fast as you feel comfortable winding. Try to move my hand out of the way here so you can see it. Again, I don't have this clamped to a table, so I'm just kind of holding it in place by the knob as I wind. Okay, and there you go. So you've got your wound ball, and you can just remove it here and slide it off. So we're going to go through the teardown and reassembly of this unit. The beautiful thing, like I said, is that it's modular. So all of these individual parts can be taken off if they need to be serviced or fixed. And they're all relatively inexpensive to buy if you ever need to replace something. So for instance, these urethane belts are well suited to this application. They're used in spinning wheels quite frequently because they're inexpensive and they're really pretty user-friendly. Now, if you're going to store the unit for more than a couple of days, you probably want to kick the belt off like that so it's not under tension. But if it does ever stretch out, you can snip it, heat it up a little bit, squeeze them together, and cut the flashing, which is the part that squeezes out. Or we sell belt kits at a very reasonable price. So the first thing you're going to want to do to disassemble the unit is take your belt off. The next step is we included these 2 hex wrenches with the winder. And the reason that we make these available is because most of the main components are either held on by machine screws or shaft collars. To remove this main winder assembly, you just stick your hex wrench in through this keyhole and onto the set screw on the shaft collar. Loosen that and you can lift the whole winder assembly off. So there's that shaft collar. To remove the dowel assembly, you just use the smaller wrench, loosen that shaft collar and pull this off. So there you go. You've got the winding assembly and the dowel assembly all disassembled. So one area where yarn will collect, or fiber will collect, is right around this bearing. So you probably would want to clean this out. You could use anything that you could get in there with, like a pair of tweezers would be great, or you could just blow it out, no problem. The next step would be to remove this thumb screw, and you can lift this right off. The yarn guide can be removed by unscrewing this knob. There's a washer on the bottom. So the reassembly of this yarn guide is the machine screw through the slot, washer onto the machine screw, and knob to tighten it into place. You don't really need to over tighten. You don't want to over tighten it. It just needs to be tight enough to hold the yarn guide in place. So there's that. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, we do plan to offer a yarn guide for chunky yarns. So you would just, to remove this, you would just loosen that set screw and pull this right out.